Gute Woche. Well, to Shabbos, Parshas Tzav, Parshas Torah. Just for next week already, after we'll change the clock. So I'm thinking of switching to, meanwhile, for Sunday evening instead of Matzah Shabbos. What we'll do for the summer season, we'll discuss further. But let's now start off on our shiur. So the first hepzikor, we had a week off. Last week was Purim. So we have here the first question. So a young mother has a 2-year-old who had developed chickenpox. But her the baby who was 1-year-old, didn't have chickenpox. So she sent her to a childminder. And then it turns out that the younger child also had chickenpox and infected all the other kids, or all, some of them. So now the mother asks me, do I have a liability for having caused the other children to have chickenpox by sending my younger child to the childminder? In addition, some of those children have, because they were affected by chickenpox, so then they don't go to the playgroup. So then the childminder isn't paid, because she's just paid by when anyone comes, but just for that day. If they don't come, then she doesn't get paid. So she's had a loss of income. So she's feeling a little bit guilty of having caused this disruption, etc. So let's first of all look at from a purely halacha level rather than a moral level. And so, first of all, there's a concept called hezek she'eino niker. If someone causes damage and the damage is not a visible damage, then they are not liable. So the classic example of that is if someone causes someone else, let's say the time when Tuma and Tara were applicable, were followed. So if someone causes someone else's food to become tummy, and now this is truma, can't eat it now. That's called a hezek she'eino niker. If, let's say, you gave me your food to look after, and I didn't, I became chometz. So the food hasn't changed. It's just that it went through Pesach without being sold, etc. So these are called hezek she'eino niker. But poskim say the hezek she'eino niker means that it's what we'd call a religious problem, a spiritual problem, something which a goy, it would make no difference to them. That would be the general definition of hezek she'eino niker. To say that affecting someone with chickenpox is a hezek she'eino niker doesn't seem to wash very well. Actually, I saw this, I looked up. I have a volume of articles which are written during COVID. So there was a discussion if someone had caused someone else to catch COVID, what's their liability? So the argument is that to say hezek she'eino niker, that doesn't really work, because it's a physical, and especially the symptoms later are going to be very niker. So that doesn't work. But then, looking from another angle, never mind hezek she'eino niker, we have another rule: gromo benizokin pater. A cause which caused a damage, you're not liable. And this itself is not a clear halacha, because sometimes we say doin dino de garmi, that you are punishable for causation. So we've got a difference between what's the title groma and the title garmi, one being not liable, one being liable. So I looked up actually in Encyclopedia Talmudis under the entry of Groma ben Izokin, where he goes through a list of poskim, rishonim, how they draw the distinction between groma, which is potter, and garmi. Let me just give you my own marshal. If I came to you went on holiday, and somehow I had access to your house, and I pulled the plug on your freezer, and then as a result, the food defrosted, and then it got ruined. Am I liable? So I'm just using this as another example of a test case for the groma or garmi. So now let's take a look at the list of opinions or explanations of what's the difference. So we have a Rashbam who says that groma, where you potter, is when the damage will come later. And garmi is when the damage comes, let's say, right away. So let's say if I open a window, I didn't look this up. Let's say I open a window and and it's raining outside, and the rain came in and damaged your stuff. According to the Rashbam, that would be called garmi rather than groma. Whereas if I opened the window and it wasn't raining, later the rain came in, damaged, that would be groma and be potter. So that's one distinction. Next distinction is the Rashba, who says, did I touch your stuff, or did I do my own thing and then it damaged your stuff? So groma would be, I didn't touch your stuff at all. That would be called groma. Garmi is where I touch your stuff also. All right. So then in the case of the freezer, that would be, according to the Rashba, that would be garmi rather than groma. But the Rosh makes a difference between groma and garmi, and he says groma is when the damage is not not for sure it's going to happen. Whereas garmi, it's inevitable. So let's come back to the example of the freezer. Is the damage, or someone's on holiday and you switch off their freezer, I think that's bori hazeka. So that would be a garmi. In our case, well, let's go before we go further. The other reasons, other explanations. With the case of the chicken-pox, it comes lachas man. Number one. Number two, it's not. I didn't touch someone else's property. I brought my kid to the childminder, but I didn't touch, the other affected people. Number three, I don't think it's bori hazeka. It's not inevitable that the child next to my child will be picking up chicken-pox. It's not inevitable. Some children will pick it up. Some do, so they could have had it before. Whatever it may be, it's not inevitable that the illness will be communicated to the specific child. You might argue for sure one of the group, and also not so sure on probabilities, but for each child, it's not bori hazeka. Right, then we have a Mordechai who makes a distinction that when the groma would be when this article remains intact, it's lost its value, which seems to sound similar to Hezek Shein and Niker. Ravid makes the difference. Groma would be if my property caused the damage rather than I myself, which again would apply here. I brought my child. It's not I myself caused the damage. The Me'irid makes the distinction whether it is a Messiah. Let's say if I put a fire and then the wind came along and caused the fire to spread, then I'm groma because I didn't do the whole thing on my own. It needed to have another factor to cause it to happen. Garmi is where it doesn't need another factor to make it happen. Okay. Finally, we have, though, this is where I was a little bit unsure. The Ritzvah makes a difference because whether it's motsu or any motsu, is it common that this damage will develop or not? Here you could argue that this is a hezek motsu, that a child who's been in the company of a child who has chicken-pox will be a carrier and will infect others. So that you could say it is a hezek motsu. Okay. Having said that, we are not actually dealing with damages as the kids catching chicken-pox. We're dealing with the aftermath, if that's the right word, the consequences, the repercussions. As a result, the mother can't send the child to the childminder. As a result, the mother loses work, the childminder loses work, but these are for sure indirect results of the children catching chickenpox. So certainly I see here that there's a din of groma ben izokim, which is potter. So in summation, I would say that there's no monetary obligation to reimburse, to recompense anyone. Is there a moral? Yes, I think that an apology is in order, but I don't think it's more than that. It's not a financial obligation. Okay, let's move on to another thing. So someone, before we let someone send something on the chat. Yes, so someone's asking, are they sure their kid was the one who caused it for all? Also true, also true. So it's all right. Now, I never heard of this word before. I might even pronounce it wrong, pinyata or pinyada. Asking well, what this is for the uninformed like myself. It's apparently I googled it, and it's originating from Mexico, that kind of area, Central America, Southern America, and it's got to do with you've got this structure with various points, 7 points, and it's filled with little bits and pieces. I'm not sure whether it's candies or something. And the minig is to bang it to the point that it breaks open, and then these little things scatter all over. That is so, and it's clearly the origin is warding off evil spirits or something. It's clearly some kind of spooky stuff like that, which sounds like Avodah Zarah to me. So, but the one who asks is, I'm not doing it for any intent of Avodah Zarah, chas v'shalom. I'm doing it just for fun, and it seems to become quite popular. So, it's not an act of Avodah Zarah. Okay, but then we have something called chukos akum, or following the practices of Avodah Zarah. So let's analyze the question. This is an act being done for pure fun, not for anything more sinister than that, but its origins are clearly in Avodah Zarah. So is that okay? And the more common question is something like yoga, which has its origins in Avodah Zarah, and people are doing it, yes or no. I've read quite strong articles showing how it is, even the yoga as it's practiced now is also still carrying with acts of or mantras of Avodah Zarah. But let's leave that to one side, dealing with this. So here we have the rule of, you can see here the rule in Shulchan Oruch, the siman is chukos akum. So we shouldn't be emulating the chukos of Goyim. Now it's quite interesting. We just learned Parshas Porah today, and we have Zos Chukas HaTorah. And Chukah generally is understood as something, a practice which has no reason, or no evident reason. So we shouldn't be emulating the Chukos HaGoyim, the statutes of the Goyim. So now, this says the Ramah. One should be distinct from Goyim. So he says it's only if the Goyim are doing, if you're dressing like the Goyim, if they're doing it for pritzos, for promiscuous intent, for example, that they would wear red clothing. And that is worn by Sorim, by prominent people, mimalbushe ha-pritzos. It's a garment of pritzos. I don't know whether I mentioned this recently. I remember once by Kinas HaShluchim about 30 years ago, it was then the very popular people were wearing orange ties, orange and bright red ties. And Rabbi Kunin's saying is that he kind of made a public statement. Why are shluchim wearing orange ties? So, all right, so that's a question of wearing red. But then what's relevant to our discussion is the following. Oy bedover shenagu leminagu lechoik ve'ein tam bedover. if goyim are doing something as a practice, and there's no logical reason, there's reason to suspect that darkei ha'amori, and there is a trace of avodah zarah from their ancestors. So when goyim are doing something which does not have any logical explanation, so then there's reason to believe, and certainly in this case we know that that's the case. It's originating from a avodah zarah practice. By contrast, he says the Panorama, if you have a doctor, if it's normal for a doctor to wear a certain type of uniform, that when he walks around, people know that he's a doctor, that's not a problem. That's a logical thing. That's okay. But when it's something which is an illogical practice, which is done by goyim, then that would come under chukas akum. So therefore, in summation, we're not saying that that playing with Pinyata is avodah zarah, but it does come under the category of chukas akum. It's emulating a practice which has its origins in avodah zarah. I see two questions on the chat. So here was someone, right? Someone's asking about the facts, whether the other kids caught it from this child. And yes, got 2 days, 1 day. As this is a question from Manchester, and I'm going to repeat what Rabbi Chazan says. Don't ruin a good story because of some facts. Whether it was 1 day or 2 days, it doesn't matter. We're talking about the lomdus, right? Okay. And someone is saying that the this Pinyata looks like voodoo. Okay, same thing, yeah. At least for people like myself, it's all the same thing. Right, let's move on to the next thing. As I told her, Shlucha wasn't so happy that she had to drop this plan. This was from before Purim, but yeah, okay. So now this is a question. I generally try to keep to questions which people ask me, rather than create my own ones. So this is a question which a gabbai in a shul in somewhere in Europe, not in England, and is asking that he is a mistaken fellow, and sometimes people are talking in shul, and he will exercise some kind of duty to tell them to not stop talking, and sometimes people get offended. So does a gabbai have a free license to offend people? This is perhaps the question. So I'm just got on the top of the page. We've got a Shulchan from this is Simon Kuf Chav Daled. Yesh ligoy, one should reprimand, shout at the people who are learning during Chazaras haShatz or saying Tachna, even if they do zone in at the end of each bracha to answer Amen appropriately. But it's inappropriate because then if they're doing their holy stuff, so then other people will be chatting, and the whole Chazaras haShatz is, it's going to be disgraced. So you have a case where there is a duty to reprimand. Does that mean you have freedom to embarrass? This is really the question. So I did a bit of a search on this. So we have here from a sefer it's a contemporary sefer. And he says, yes, you have in Shulchan Oruch sometimes that one should goyarim by someone who's talking during Chazaras haShatz, one should reprimand them. I want to just, before I go further, I want to share with you, or perhaps I did say already once, about a month ago, we had a meeting of Gaboyim from all around London. There's Baruch Hashem, I don't know, 10 or 15 Chabad minyanim, and the Gaboyim of each of those minyanim was invited, and we had a very, I think, a very productive evening discussing strategies of Gabos. I wasn't there as the Gabe, by the way, just what you said about Halocho, and I felt it was a very productive evening. So actually, one of the Gaboim said there that one of the tricks he does is if someone's a bit overly chatty, they'll give him during Kriyas Torah, they'll give him an aliyah, and then that stops him chatting. Meanwhile, he knows he has to pay money for his mishaberach, so then that's another disincentive for him to be chatting for the future. Okay, fine. But okay, so he writes the following. It's obvious that if you're going to reprimand someone, they're going to be upset. So he quotes here from Rav Wosner that yes, there's a chiur of hechacha, there's a chiur of reprimanding. Well, then we have general rules for reprimanding, and that is, first of all, it has to be done in private, to be done in a calm way. And if that doesn't work, then one would have to use the public way. And then Rav Osner says sometimes you can't really get things right. You can't get it all the way. And if you see that that's by going over, going all the way, you're going to damage Darchei HaTorah. You're not going to be able to do it right. So then you kabel schar al haprisha. You'll be rewarded for not pursuing it. So it's what I wrote to this fellow in response. I said that you should be looking at the people in shul as, let's say, the customers, your clients who are coming to your shop, and you should be try to make them comfortable, etc. There may be sometimes a customer who causes so much of a nuisance that it actually may be a decision, a strategic decision to ask them not to come to the store again. But who makes that decision? That's certainly not a decision to be made on the spur of the moment. And that's something which has to be weighed up carefully, whether one wants to take that route. Okay, but I don't think that should be the Gabba alone should make that decision. It should be discussed with the Rov of the shul, etc. It's a very weighty decision to take that step to say that the person is not welcome in the shul. I had recently a case, again, this is not in England, that there's a man who has a troubled past, and there was a child who was making noise in the ladies section, and he got so nervous he went into the ladies section and started shouting at this child or whatever. But they know that he's not a well person, so how do you handle that? Yeah, there may be situations where that person should be asked, at least perhaps for a few weeks, to take a break. Maybe, but it's something which is it's not a free rein. It's not a Hefkeveld. Yeah. Someone is saying that he goes to a shul where the Rav will stop the Shliach Tzibur or Bal Koire when there's talking. Yeah, fine. Yes, Baruch Hashem. Some places it's doable. Some places it's less doable. Generally, punishment works when it's very much in the minority. You can't punish a whole tzibur. You can perhaps use punishment for a minority, and the general awareness is that it's not okay. If the general awareness is that it is okay, then punishment isn't the way. That's the way is education. I have just one. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one thought on that says in the Gemara, "Misharovu haratzchonin." It says in the Gemara, in the times when where murder was rampant, so the Sanhedrin exiled themselves from their regular seat, and they went to some kind of shop, whatever. And so you have sometimes the Gemara where they see that they are not able to implement the halacha as it is, they have to sometimes step back, and as I say, then there's the need for re-education. Rather than punishment as a strategy. Let's move on. Right, now, what's the next question here? So this is my own question. We were learning Gemara, and it came up that there's a minhag of looking at the Chazan when the Chazan says Birkas Kohanim. Now this you can see, the first quote is from Sefer HaMinhagim. It doesn't say it's a minhag for everyone. It says it's a minhag of the Admurim, the Rebbes, would turn for Chazaras haShatz at Birkas Kohanim. They would turn to face the Chazan, and that by our Rebbe was very, very obvious that the Rebbe was during davening standing and looking, or standing or sitting, looking in the Siddur. He would get up for Moedim, and then when it came the end of Moedim, of the Birkas Moedim, the Rebbe turns around to his left, looking intently at the Chazan. So there is the idea of looking towards the Chazan. What's the reason for this? And the background here, you have here a source to this minhag. This is in a sefer called Yofer Lelev, who was, I believe, a son of Reb Chaim Falaji. And he says that this idea of the Chazan is giving a bracha. And so you turn towards the Chazan to be in a like a receiving mode, like the original Birkas Kohanim. We make a point of ponim el ponim. That says Gemara ponim el ponim. So there's the idea of first facing the Chazan. The difference being that by Birkas Kohanim, the Kohen is facing you and you're facing the Kohanim. Yeah. Whereas here, which looking towards the Chazan is looking ahead. The origin of this minig is in Sephardi communities. In Sephardi communities, often the Chazan actually stands more central rather than up front. Then it's more likely that people would be ponim el ponim, but that's the background. So my question was, yeah, so assuming you wanted to, that is when it says you should face the direction of the Chazan. What happens if you're facing the direction of the Chazan, but there's a wall in between because you're in a side room, there's an L-shaped room. So is facing the direction of the Chazan, or is it you should be seeing the Chazan? So what came up in Gemara recently, we're talking about in Gemara, it came out in Gemara Yuma, based the Mishnah in Midas about all the walls of the Azara are tall walls, with the exception of the eastern wall. The reason why that was lower is because on the east of the Temple Mount, there is Mount of Olives, Har HaZeisim, and that's where the Porah Aduma, again, Parshas Porah, the Porah Aduma would be done on Har HaZeisim, Har HaMishcha. And when that is done, the blood is to be sprinkled, Noichach Pesach Oyel Moed, or something, to facing the Oyel Moed. So now that is why the eastern wall of the Azora, etc., had to be lower, so that standing on Har HaZeisim, you'd be able to see all the way through till the entrance of the Heichal. Now, if you say facing the direction is good enough without having to have eye contact, so then why do they have to have a lower wall and have a tall one, just face their direction? So obviously, when the Torah says Noichach Pesach Oyel Moed, so that means to have eye contact. And same thing when it comes to ponim el ponim, when it comes to facing the Chazan. Having said that, if it's a very busy shul and there's lots of other people in the way, if everyone's going to push to see the Chazan, it's not going to be always possible. So we do have a halacha, a separate halacha about when there is an advantage to daven, a recommended thing to daven to facing the wall. What happens if there are animals in the way? That's a chatzitza. But if there are people in the way, which we have from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Oruch, Simon Sadik, if there are people in the way, they don't constitute an intervention between yourself and the wall, because it's like min b'mina yena chatzitz. Then brings other opinions, but there is so all right. If it's a full shul, so then dafka to push you away to be able to see, have eye contact, I don't think that's necessary. But if there's like an L-shaped room, you should be walking over if you want to follow this minute, yeah. So then you'd walk over to be able to have eye contact. Someone is writing the following. I'm going to read it out. What is the position of someone who has unavoidably to daven ahead to avoid rebuke? Should he go out or assume that the reason for rushing on is known? All right, that's something I'm going to leave that for another time because it's a separate question. We can discuss this by email rather than having to discuss it now on the spur of the moment. Let's move on. So question number 5. Okay. So last Friday, I got an email or WhatsApp message that someone says, I'm having an event and I'm having non-from people coming. Non-from as in non-Shemesh Shabbos at all. And I want to serve cocktails, and to make cocktails, I'm going to mix in wine and I don't know what the other ingredients are. Is it pineapple juice? I don't even know. But he's asking that he's mixing other things with wine. Does he need to have yain mevushal, or can he use non-mevushal wine? Because if it's wine and they will touch the wine, then it will become forbidden, or the yain, stam yain or yain nesach, whatever you want to call it. So on the spur of the moment, I told him that there is a concept of wine becoming bottle in 1 to 6, but that is only, so you can see here, I think it's from Simon Kuflamadala the other day, where we have that if wine is mixed with 6 parts of water to 1 part of wine, then it's no longer osur. You're allowed to drink it. But on the spot, the Meforshim, the Tshach or Tzav says that's only water diluting wine. If wine is diluted with water, it loses its potency. It's no longer wine. What happens if, let's say, if wine was diluted, was mixed with another drink, which is also tasty? So it's not necessarily going to compromise the quality of the wine. It may actually enhance the wine. It's not clear. So as a result, I told him that he should use yain mevushal. Afterwards, during Shabbos, last Shabbos, I was thinking about this, and I realized I had made a mistake here. And that is because the Shulchan Oruch here in Kuf Lamed Daled, the lower quote, is talking about wine which has already been osur because of contact with a goy. Then it takes 6 parts of water to dilute it and to decommission it as forbidden. Here we're talking about kosher wine and mixed in various flavors, and does it still remain the status of wine? Now that idea of wine being mixed with other drinks as some kind of cocktail is mentioned in the Gemara. It's called sometimes something like aluntis or yain mulin. And so here we have in Shulchan Aruch wine which is mixed with honey and with pilpulin, with some kind of, usually we translate it as pepper. If it distorts the taste of the wine, then the wine is no longer wine, and it would not be us if a guy touches it. It says dvash, if it's just dvash, just pilpulin. So if wine is mixed with other drinks and no longer tastes of wine, and doesn't taste of wine, it doesn't taste like wine, then it's no longer wine, and if a guy touches it, it would be mutter to drink it. If in the immediate instance here, again, here we're talking about there's a bit of pepper mixed into the wine, predominantly it's still going to have a taste of wine. It would still be hagofen. There, in the case of the cocktails, where you've got wine mixed, let's say 1 part of wine and 2 parts of apple juice and pineapple juice, whatever, then I would suspect that it would lose the hagofen also. And certainly it's not a problem as far as the issue of yain nesach, etc. Okay, let's go on. We have the coming from Purim. I'll try to go through this quickly. What we have on Purim, by day that the Sefer Torah is kept. In Chabad, the Sefer Torah is kept out until after the Megillah is read. So we have to find a volunteer to sit there with the Sefer Torah for 3/4 of an hour, and only then is the Sefer Torah after then Ashrei Volatzir, and then the Sefer Torah is brought back. Most communities don't do that, and in the series of Chikre Minhagim from Rav Gurari, so in volume Gimel, he's got a whole article, several pages, showing different opinions one way or the other. And really what it boils down to is actually going back to a regular Monday and Thursday. Is a Sefer Torah. So here you can see in the tour, I believe it's in Kuf Mem Tes, in the dinim of Kriyas HaTorah, it says the following. After Kriyas HaTorah, Shliach Tzibur says Kaddish, Sefer Torah is returned. And then you say Tila David, etc. But Yesh Mekoimus, they first say Tila David and Kedusha, which is all it's in, and then they bring back the Sefer Torah. So we have here this question: does Sefer Torah go back straight after Kriyas HaTorah, or is it kept out until after Asher Volatzin? This is an old difference of minhagim between Ashkenaz and Sfard, and as a result, according to Minig Ashkenaz, Sefer Torah is brought straight back. So it's also brought back before Megillah. According to Minig Sfardim, it's brought back after Volatzin, and therefore on Purim also it stays till after the Megillah. Actually, just last night I was browsing and I found I have a Adani Siddur. There they write that you should take the Sefer Torah back right away, although they're Sephardim, but they say you take the Sefer Torah right away because they're worried that the Sefer Torah should not be exposed to irreverent behavior during if it was kept out longer. Take it straight back. Okay. Meanwhile, what is the reason for the Minhag HaSfardim to leave the Sefer Torah out until after Avodat? That's what we're going to look at. So in the Shar HaKoilel, he quotes here from Rabbi Yaakov Ebden, and he says that al pi derech Soid, there is idea that after Shemon Esrei, then there's Yerida So'elmes. And we delay the taking back so that there should be a gradual to prolong the shefa, the kedusha which is coming down to the world shouldn't during Shemon Esrei it's a very high hashpor and shouldn't be immediate cutoff. It should be a tapering down, and that way it's going to be more having a desirable effect on a connection to Elam Hazeh. And so he connects just to there's a Gemara which the end of Soter says that every day there's no day that there's not worse than the day before in curses, etc. And then it says that what does the world stand on? Alma Mai Mekomekayim. So it says Akdusha de Sidro Yehesh Meirabada Gadato. What does the world stand on? On Kedusha de Sidra, which is Kedusha in Volotzion, and Heshme Rabada Gadato. So what exactly do those words mean? And why does this Kaddish, Heshme Rabo after Agadato, and Kedusha de Sidra, why is this holding up the world? So what the Rabbi Yaakov Emden is explaining here, what he means is that yes, Shemon Esrei has been very exalted. And then coming back into the world, there's like a cliff drop. Alma Mai Mekayim. How does the world continue to function when coming from Shemon Esrei into the world it's such immediate drop? So the answer is no. There's Kedusha de Sidra and Yehesh Merabada Gadato. So then there is after Shemon Esrei there is a tapering down. There is still a Kedusha in Evolution. There's still and then there's the Kaddish thereafter. That is like a gradual tapering down of the Kedusha coming down into the world. In that way, the world is able to sustain. That's basically what the Rabbi Yaakov Emden is saying. And the Shara Koila brings this later on in the chapter. He says this is also the purpose of leaving the Sefer Torah longer, to prolong the hashpoah of Kedusha in the world that the Sefer Torah has brought about. So that's his explanation. Okay, let's move on. Right. So now this is a bit of feedback on the new edition of the Kitzur Shulchan Oruch with Minhagei Chabad, where it was brought that there's a minhag to bang homon, like banging for homon during the recital of the list of the Aseres B'nei Homon. So the source of that is in the Kol Chabad Luach, and which is written by Reb Chaim Noah, and this is from what you have on the screen. Is from there's a new volume, which was published in the last 10 years, of Reb Chaim Noah's various writings, which hadn't been published before in a volume, where he writes, I remember when I was a child in the holy city of Hebron, that the tzibur, the community, would say Aseres B'nei Homon before the Baal Koyder. Now, that's how we do, yeah? We say Aseres B'nei Homon, although some say this, I think Mishnah Berurah says there's no point in saying that. Why was reading the Aseres B'nei Homon? But that is the minhag. We say Aseres B'nei Homon first. And then, when the community would say Aseres B'nei Homon, the children would bang. Then the Baal Koyder would read over the Aseres B'nei Homon, and people wouldn't bang. And he says, why do the Aseres B'nei Homon have? Why do we read them first? We read other positive things. Why we read the Aseres B'nei Homon? Because we read them so that should be able to get the banging. Should be able to get porpetch. Because when the Baal Koyder is reading, we can't bang because we have to hear them. He has to say, but you can't take a pause. You have to be read in one breath. So in order to be able to bang for Aseres B'nei Homon, it's necessary for the tzibur to say it first, and then the then the Balkoya reads it in one breath. So there is that minhag, but I think the editor who wrote to me about this, he was right that the poil, although that was Reb Chaim Noah's minhag in Hebron and perhaps in Shalim, but it's not the widespread minhag to bang, in Chabad at least, to bang during a Seres B'nai Haman. So really it shouldn't be there. Okay. One of our listeners, one of our regulars, asked me the following question. This is question number 8, that he was born, before he was born, his mother had a baby boy who did not live more than 2 weeks. He had a medical condition, which, so he's asking, so he's not a b'choir as far as Pidyon Haben, because his mother had given birth before. Is he a b'choir in any other aspect? Does he have to fast, and therefore does he have to fast for Erev Pesach and attend the Siyum, etc.? So here you have, which we actually learned this today in this afternoon in the Halocho shiur in Siman Tov Ayin. If a woman had a stillbirth and then had a healthy child, that child is not a b'choir for Pidyon Haben because it's not Peterechem. But he is a b'choir as far as in the estate goes. He will get a double portion of the estate, and therefore he should be fasting on Erev Pesach. But then here the Mishnah, the Bar Heitev, etc., brings from the Shvus Yaakov, who writes the following: that a child who's born after a nefel ben tisha, the previous child the pregnancy was 9 months, and the child died within 30 days of birth, then the next child does not need to fast. And basically is saying that true, if the mother had a stillbirth and then a child, the healthy child, that child is a b'choir as far as the estate goes. But if the mother gave birth to a living child, although the child did not live long, but that is enough to say that the next child is not called Reishis Oini. It doesn't count as a b'choir for the Yerusha, because there was a child who was alive, albeit for a short period, and therefore there's no need. The next child is not a b'choir, and there's no need for him to fast on Erev Pesach nor attend a Siyum. He's been doing so. Okay, that's a minhag toiv, but it's not mechuyev to continue min hadin. Okay. So now the second last thing which you have here, and that is a bocher in Morristown sent me a few questions and answers. So someone had told him I'd be interested in what he wrote, and actually I was, and rather chuffed at the thought. But then he writes the following. So we have a description of the Rebbe Rashab. Now this story, as you can see here, I've quoted it from the Hayom Yom. This is the Rebbe published the Hayom Yom in Tofshin Gimel Dalad thereabouts, and then he had actually prepared to publish another volume of Hayom Yom, and that was never published by the Rebbe. But in the volume called Rishimas Hayoman, this Hayom Yom Chelik base is there, and this is also in the Sefer HaMenhagim. It's written, and it says that the source is Rishimas of the Rebbe. So the story is the following: it was once on a Monday or a Thursday within the year of the Avelus of the morning after the Rebbe's mother had passed away, as in the Rebbe Rashab's mother, Rebbe Tzarivka. So the Rebbe Rashab got up from his place to go to the bima to say Kaddish after Kriyas HaTorah. Meanwhile, someone else began to say Kaddish because he didn't notice the Rebbe walking over to the bima. But as soon as he noticed, so he stopped saying Kaddish and he stepped back. The Rebbe motioned to him to stay where he is. The Rebbe said the Kaddish. Then he instructed the other fellow also to say Kaddish. So, all right, so this is an interesting story. First question is, why is this quoted in Sefer HaMenhagim? it's a bit of history. It's not a regular minhag. There was some kind of mix-up, but why does that belong in Sefer HaMinhagim? A couple of interesting things here, and also the fact that there's twice Kaddish being said after Kriyas HaTorah. I want to point out another thing, that the Rebbe did not have the Aliyah LaTorah. Yeah? Even though he was in the year of Havelus, he did not have the Aliyah LaTorah. Someone else, it looks like, and then he was just walking over. All right, a little bit more background. The Kaddish after Kriyas HaTorah, is it the privilege of the Bal Koire, of the one who had an Aliyah, the last Aliyah, or is it like the Kaddish after Kaveh or Kaddish after Shir Shel Yoim, that it's Kaddish which is actually available for the Yisayim to say? If there's no chiyuv, then someone volunteers to say it. That's what they're about. So this in the Sefer Mati Ephraim, Shari Ephraim, Shari Ephraim is quite clear about this. He says that if the Shlishi is an oval, he should say the Kaddish. If a Yortzeit is going to have Maftir, he's coming to the Bim, in any case, he should say Kaddish. He clearly seems to be saying that otherwise it's nothing to do with him. If he's not going to be standing next to the Bim in any case, then he shouldn't be saying the Kaddish. And here we're seeing that, and that's indeed the Minhag Chabad, as we saw in the story, and we saw by the Rebbe, that even if he's not a chiyuv, even if he's not having the aliyah, he will still make a point of saying that Kaddish, and that's what we're doing when applicable. If there's a chiyuv in the room, in the shul, so we'll invite them to say that Kaddish. So contrary to the view of the Shari Ephraim that this Kaddish primarily belongs to the Bal Koire, it seems to be that actually it should be given to the one who has Yortzeit or Inshnasa Avelis. So I think that is the value of this story, at least that message. Now, on the margin, on the screen, you can see here a quote from a sefer called Agudas Ezov Midbari, who was a Rov in Poland in about 150 years ago, in a town called, I think, Lovich, something like that. And he's discussing this question: who about this Kaddish? And he quotes from the Tashbitz. The Tashbitz writes that a child under bar mitzvah should not be saying this Kaddish. It has to be an adult. Okay, accept that. So, all right. So if you're saying that a child shouldn't be given this Kaddish, even though there's a Yosim, that tells me that if he was an adult, it should be given to him. That's what this Sefer deduces. So he wants to bring a eye. I saw just this evening in another Sefer who refutes this, to say that the Tashbitz evidently holds that you can give a child, you can give it under bar mitzvah, you can give him an aliyah. So who says he's talking about a child who's there al sachiyav as Yosem? Perhaps as the last oile, they would say the Kaddish. So it's not so evident. What I have discovered recently is that in Svardische Minhagim, that the several Avelim will come and say Kaddish together at the end of Kriyas HaTorah. I looked in a couple of Svardische Sidurim, and by other Kaddeshim it says that haShatz says a Kaddish. After Kriyas HaTorah it says Ve'oimrim. It doesn't go into more detail than that, but a couple of people from Tunisia, from Morocco, told me that that's what they've seen, that there are several Avelim. So they're clearly seeing this as a Kaddish, which is the privilege of the Yisayimim to say. Ad k'dei kach, now we have here two views. Here's the Kaddish after Kriyas HaTorah, belonging to the Chazan, to the Bal Koire rather, and he allows the Yosim to say it, and then there should be only one person saying that Kaddish, or is it actually open for several people to say Kaddish even, and it's more the Yosim Kaddish? So possibly, and this is part of what this young man in Morristown is asking, why didn't he tell him to finish Kaddish? Possibly the following: the Rebbe wanted to say Kaddish, but then had the other fellow finished Kaddish, then it wouldn't make sense for the Rebbe to say Kaddish afterwards, because by Ashkenazim we don't have several people saying Kaddish after Kriyas Torah. Possibly, though, once the Rebbe had said Kaddish, then you can turn to the other fellow. You say, Hamaskal mitzvah. Once you've started, you have to finish, and so that could be the cheshbon which went on over there. That's as much as I could suggest at the moment. Okay, what do we have here? Someone is suggesting that Rebbe may have had a maftir after the Kaddish. No, this story over here is on Monday and Thursday, so there was no maftir. Yeah. Okay, let's go our last thing. Now, if you remember on the Parshas, was it Parshas Pikude, we had this whole discussion which maftir to say. Because Parshas Vayakhel was also Parshas Shkolim, so in some Chamoshim it has that because on Parshas Shkolim we didn't read Vayakhel because it was pushed away by Parshas Shkolim. Therefore, we should read the Haftorah of Parshas Shkolim of Parshas Vayakhel should be read in Parshas Pekudei. That is traced back to the Maharil. Now, what I want to show you on this screen is that if you can see, so someone pointed out to me, I read Mendel Safrin and others, that actually the Maril says to say the Haftorah of Vayas Chiroim, whereas Chabad Minik follows that the Haftorah of Vayakhel is Vayishlach Shloimeh. Okay, let's go a little bit further. That these are all in one sequence. You can see that you have the Haftorah, which Chabad do for Vayakhel, is from chapters Zion, from Yud Gimel through Chavav. The Haftorah of Minhag Ashkenaz is from Posuk Mem through till Posuk Nun. Now, then, what the Maril says is you should, because you didn't read Vayas Chiroim and Parshas Vayakhel, you should read Parshas Pekudei, you should read Vayas Chiroim. But then you should also read these two psukim in green, Vatishlam Kol Halocho and the Posuk Oz Yakhel Shloimeh. Why so? Because that's which follows straight on after Vayas Chiroim, as you can see, Posuk Nun Aleph and Perek Ches Posuk Aleph. Why so? Because by Yikohalu, which is the official Haftorah for Parshas Pekudei, starting from Vatishlam till and Vayikohalu, that Vayikohalu is read on the second day of Sukkot. So since it's already read on the second day of Sukkot, so then you can afford to not say it on Parshas Pekudei. But these two psukim of Vaytishlam and Oz Yakhel Shloimeh are not said on Parshas on the second day of Sukkot. Therefore, says the Maril, all right, I'm telling you to say Vayas Chiroim, but the two psukim which you didn't say on Sukkot, make sure to say those words, those two psukim. Yeah. So you got it. So you got here pasuk after Vayas Chiroim Ashkenaz. Maril says, say these two psukim Vatishlam Kol Hamlocha. Right. So that might also be the reason, one of the reasons why in Chabad we're not doing that, because we're not, if we're substituting Vayakhel instead of Pekudei, it's not Vayas Chiroim, which leads straight into Vatishlam Kol Hamlocha, but we would have to do Vayishlach HaMelech Shloimeh, and then have to skip some 50 or whatever, 20 psukim to find that place. And there's the worry you might not necessarily find it so easily. I'm not so sure about that reason, because if you were Mavis Sedra today, and you did, or yesterday, and you did the Haftorah of Parshas Tzav, so there's also a skip, and So we skip a whole section until we come to Bazosis Halal Hamis Halal. So to skip, and especially where there's a gap which you can identify where to skip to easily, that seems to be legitimate. Now, one last thing, and that is, we had someone in when we were discussing this. So someone asked the question: is it is the Haftorah Vayakel ever read, or is it always pushed aside when it's Vayakel Pekudei? Then Pekudei Haftorah is read. When it's Vayakel, then most times it's going to be coinciding with Parshas Shkolim. So is Vayakel ever read? So I want to just share with you, just for general information. So we have, I think, 7 pairs of parashos, which are sometimes combined and sometimes separate. And what you have in the front of you is from the Tur Siman Tov Chof Ches. And just to look at this carefully, often in a luach, you'll see the code for that year. And it starts off with either a base, a gimel, a hey, or a zayin. This is the first letter of these codes is which day of the week was Rosh Hashanah. As you know, Rosh Hashanah cannot be on a Sunday, Wednesday, or a Friday. So you've got 4 other options: Beis, Gimel, Hey, Zayin. These are the 4 possibilities of Rosh Hashanah. Then we've got the second letter of this code is addressing the variation of whether Cheshvan and Kislev, well, we have 29 days or 30 days. If both have only 29 days, it's a ches, which stands for kosher. If both have 30 days, it's called sholem. And if they have one is 29 and one is 30, then it's called kasidron, and that's the chof, the gimel chof, hey chof, etc. So these are the codes for the years. And what we're seeing here is that when Rosh Hashanah starts off on a well, we have here, if Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, which means also if Rosh Hashanah is Thursday, that's Shmini Atzeres is Thursday, and Shabbos Bereshis is the day after Yom Tov. Yeah, if that's the sequence, plus it's a sholem, which means it's twice 30 days, that will cause the Vayakel Pekudei will be kept separate. And in that year, it's not going to be Parshas Shkolim, apparently. And similarly, in a leap year, it's in the same sequence. So Parshas Vayakel Pekudei will be separate. And apparently, in those years, when it's Hey Shin, or is it Hey, I'm not sure which one, then Vayakel Pekudei will be separate, and it's not going to be coinciding with Parshas Shkolim. And now, in those occasions, Parshas the Haftorah of Vayakel, whether it's Vayas Chirim or Vayishlach Melech Shlomo, will be actually read. Okay, that's for tonight. And as I said in the beginning of the shiur, next week Motzei Shabbos will not be applicable, will not be possible, but hopefully Sunday a week. Will helpen. Should be well. Wish you a good Tavach. We should have a week of Simcha, and we should hear the Besuras Hagula, Mashiach Tzidkenu, Beheri Ameinu Mamash.
Good work.